I could exchange that quantifier and turn it into an existential quantifier by saying that is equivalent to, it's not the case that there exists something that is not that. All things are that, so therefore it's not the case that there is something that's not that.
So everything is an animal, therefore nothing is everything is an animal, therefore
That's why I need to write it down. And this works for every instance of quantifiers. So if I have, for example, it's for anything you pick, it's not the case that it's that. That's equivalent to, and the rule here is you put a quantifier where there isn't one, and then you change the quantifier. So it's not the case that there exists an X that is that. You plug this through your head and you try to follow it, maybe pick a specific item and so on. It works a little easier. We can have, it's not the case for anything you pick that it is that, and that works out to be there is such an X that is not that. And then if we have a negation in both places, it becomes there is one. So you get all four possibilities, and what this demonstrates is that universals are equivalent to a particular. So Aristotle was arguing about two different types of knowledge that is equivalent. So there isn't two types of knowledge, there's only one. And if you're a pragmatist, and Quine is a neo-pragmatist, what does that mean? That means that we're always ready to change our definition on a moment's notice when we discover a black swan or something that's contrary to it. In other words, we don't really have universal knowledge. We have a hypothesis that we think of as that's always true, pending a specific event that I learn that it is false. And so two dogmas of empiricism does away with roughly 4,000, well, not 4,000, but 3,000 years. And this came out, I believe, 1952, and it's online, so you could read it if you like. And it was, I mean, it's not the only thing, of course, that he did. He wrote Word and Object, talking about the relationship between words and objects and things of that sort. Another instance of really where this applies, pointing out that we don't have a problem of whether universals are real or not. It becomes a word game, essentially. And they definitely have, Quine definitely uses the concept of language games that you get from Wittgenstein and so on. And in fact, one of the books since then is The Prison House of Language, which is actually quite difficult. But the focus has become, okay, so Kant pointed out, yes, we can still think about the nature of things, metaphysics, despite what Hume pointed out to us, because we are structured in some way, and we can analyze that structure. That went on to become a cultural and linguistic structure, and now it's refined to the point where we have multiple language games, even within what we might call English. Not only because you've got Southern speak, and you've got New York, and you've got, your Western kind of, out and about, kind of folks, but also because within say, medical speak. You know, you might have a specific language that you're learning in order to be a good nurse. You know, you have to know what the hypodemic nurdles are for and when to use them and what kind of syringes do what and whether or not this is a, you know, well, like the tooth fairy, you know. Oh, you lost your tooth. Stuff the towel. You'll get money for this. You know, I mean, there's specific language that you learn when you're learning to become a fluent speaker of nurse. Does that make sense? Kind of? Yes?
Legalese.
Legalese, absolutely. You know,
Music notation.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, mathematics. I understand that there's 250 different subspecialties in neuroscience, and that many of those cannot speak to one another because they're using different language games in what they're studying and so on. And you hear this, you know, we're using this a lot in lots of different contexts. And it feels like a cheap escape from the dilemma, because you really want to feel like, well, but things really have to happen because of the chain of cause and effect. You can't just escape this by saying it's a word game. Well, how do we answer that? It seems to me that, well, but I really like this game. I want to stay in this game. I want to apply this game to everything, and you can, probably. The trouble is, there are other games, and they have different rules, and we actually use them. I mean, a favorite case, of course, would be the legal situation of a person. They did something. We can say, well, the reason they did it was because they grew up in a community where everybody expects everyone to shoot one another. You know, and everyone's on drugs, and this person was on drugs, and the people that were, you know, killed his friend, you know, said, oh, I'll come back to kill you, tomorrow, and they do, and he shoots them first. And so, yes, did he murder them? Yes, he did. Was it absolutely a chain of cause and effect? Certainly looks that way to us. But do we actually hold him as guilty anyway? Of course we should, right? You know, yeah, you have to do that. That's because in court we've got a different language game going on that concerns human agency. Well, you have to be responsible for what you do, even if you feel like the only reason you did it was because of the demons in your mind that you saw that made you do it. You know, I was defending everybody by shooting them, keeping them from Satan, you know, which was, you know, okay, jail for you, you know, or the equivalent. So, thank you, Wittgenstein. This is Frederick Jamison. He's still alive, by the way. I should mention him. He's one of the ones I have. He's a Duke, I believe. And famous. Postmodernism. Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism is his most famous. The Political Unconscious. It's a shame that we get to these current people so late in the course. We've only got 2 more sessions to meet. But he's definitely fascinating. Very difficult to follow, I think. Speaking of difficult, Jacques Derrida, who died from smoking himself to death, as far as I know. No? Yes, he died 2004, smoking himself to death. A lot of the French philosophers just 2 cigarettes at a time kind of thing, you know?
It's still like that over there. That was one of the biggest shocks when I visited. Is everything smells like smoke.
Except the brie. Brie?
Well,
Yeah.
You talking about the cheese?
I don't know how to pronunciate it.
It's brie.
It's brie. That's what my daughter says. It's brie. I don't know. Okay, so what about him? So many American philosophers in the analytic tradition don't consider them philosophers, they consider them nonsense. In fact, if you listen to Noam Chomsky, also known as Nim Chimpsky, if you're familiar with people that talk about Noam, I've shown you Noam before, right? He looks really wrinkled now. You know, I think he's got a philosopher's stone, actually. That's a joke. Philosopher's stone, that's, you're supposed to be able to get, you know, eternal life and lots of gold or whatever, you know, from this philosopher's stone. Why do they not consider him or any of his French colleagues who talk the way he talks, and I don't mean French, they don't think of him as a philosopher, they don't think of him as worthy of study. Obviously they have fans, and the fans learn to be fluent speakers of Derrida's postmodern language, right? And I'm not. I'm not a fluent speaker, although I've read enough to understand that they understand one another. They're talking about language in a way that is trying to escape the structure that contains that thinking. So they're trying to think outside of the box. This time the box, of course, is the language itself. And how do you get outside of it? A clue to where they're coming from is Heidegger. And I thought I had Heidegger up here somewhere. Mark, there he is. So Heidegger. Martin Heidegger was a student of Husserl. I'm thinking Husserl should be Edmund Husserl. Here we go. So Edmund Husserl is going to give us what is referred to as phenomenology. Right? So phenomenology was obviously the word that Hegel used when he described the book, The Phenomenology of Spirit. And so when we're looking at the study of the phenomena, so phenomenology is the study of the phenomena. Husserl, in creating a science of phenomenology, believes that everyone's experience is uniquely different because of their language, their environment, their own particular situation. And in order to understand them, what we have to do is study the way things seem to be for them. And the way to do that is to block your own bias so that you're not taking your bias and framing their bias in terms of your own bias, because then you're not going to be able to understand the way they're thinking. Instead, you have to block that out of your way and just record what they say happens to them, the experiences they have, you know, in the jungle, the spirits that they experience, the feeling of religious awe that you might have in a Dresden cathedral, or the way some of my friends were all excited because one of our friends made it to La Chapelle in Paris, you know, the one that's all glass, all, you know, et cetera. If you've been in there, I've only been in there virtually, but that seems pretty close to me. But in any case, I'm sure it is quite different. In fact, she made a video of her experience, and it was so noisy from all the tourists just yelling and and the echo chamber just took it and made it absolutely a miserable experience, I'm sure. But instead, you could just, listen to Gregorian chant, and look at 360 view of that place. And it seems to me that would be actually a better experience of it. But no, you have to